Womanjika everyone, Womanjika meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandans, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Mooloolah Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community.
Could you put your microphone
help
on?
people learn new things and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Wominjeka, everyone. Wominjeka meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne, and I'm an out of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people. And in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders, past, present, future, and any elders that were here today. And I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of 3 families, the Nevins, the Terricks, and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The 3 families all descend from one woman called Annie Barratt, which makes us one big family. Annie Barratt is the youngest sister of William Barratt, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Wathaurong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover. Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Mooloolik Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, They would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragaeta, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil, the wedge-tailed eagle, is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
and I hope you can hear me too. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting on the 25th of August 2026, which we declare open at 6:30. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public who have joined us tonight, whether you're online or whether you are in the gallery, welcome. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I'd also ask if mobile phones could be switched to silent mode during the meeting. And a reminder to people in the public gallery that hearing loops are available at the chamber entrance, and that as per governance rule 75.1, personal video and audio recordings not permitted during meetings. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to spirits, ancestors and community members, elders, past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Council is committed to working with our broader community to promote reconciliation, awareness and understanding of our shared history, and the revival of the Woiwurrung language that was nearly lost through colonisation. As part of this commitment, approval has been provided by Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Elder and Language Keeper Auntie Gail Smith to read our acknowledgement to country in Woiwurrung language. Wangananu nagu Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Gulan Naganan Tuan Bigwena Wap Moonee Valley Dari. Wangananu gaguk nangit bambuth ba yalambu. Nagit naguna gayan tabuk gaguk nangit. Ba nagwaran yu angulun magali yalambu. So we now move to item 2 on the agenda, which is apologies and leave of absence. And we have an apology tonight from Councillor Adams. And we also note that Councillor Sypek and Councillor Theocharides are both joining us online. We don't have any requests for leave of absence this evening. So that brings us to item 3 on the agenda, which is confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 28th of July 2026 be confirmed?
Happy to move it, Mayor.
Moved by Councillor John Sypek, seconded by Councillor Hamish Jones. Councillor John Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion? That's no. Councillor Hamish Jones, no. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? In which case I'll put that to the vote. Just before I do though, Councillor Theocharides, are you able to turn your camera on?
Sorry about that. I've just got a point order question.
All good.
Asking you a question.
It's all good. All those in favour? Yep, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We now come to foreshadowing of conflicts of interest. So does any councillor wish to flag a conflict of interest on any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I will flag a general conflict of interest on 9.2. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. And Councillor John Barnes.
I also will be flagging the same conflict of interest. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. The next item on the agenda is presentations, and I believe we have some presentations tonight. Councillor John Sypek, we might start with you being online. So would you like to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to give a verbal presentation of my attendance at the 2026 National General Assembly of Local Government. I attended this conference, and there was over 1,100 local government leaders from across Australia to discuss many issues affecting local governments and local communities and the future of local government. During the conference, there were valuable insights into key issues facing a lot of councils across Australia, including financial sustainability of local governments, infrastructure and local roads funding, and this is one that's very relevant to us right now, which is on our agenda tonight, housing supply and community infrastructure. So there'll be plenty of talk amongst that, and emergency management and disaster resilience, some of the things that were on show. I participated in discussions and presentations from federal ministers, parliamentarians and sector leaders on emerging policies, issues and opportunities for strong partnerships with local government. The conference reinforced the critical role councils play in delivering the majority of services of infrastructure and community outcomes. The National Government Assembly also provided opportunities in regards to networking with other councillors and officers across Australia, finding out some of the shared experiences of what they do and what are some of the best practices going along in local government. We learnt about a lot of new initiatives, service deliveries and community engagement initiatives. Considering how much approach used by other councils could be applied within the city of Moonee Valley. And a significant outcome of the conference was the sector's unity in the advocacy for the increase of financial assistance grants, with delegates supporting a motion unanimously calling for the restoration of these grants to 1% of the Commonwealth Taxation Reserve and improve with the long-term financial sustainability of council. Now, there are three very important numbers here: 69, 28 and 3. And they are the percentages of every dollar that every Australian pays taxes. 69% goes to the federal government, 28% goes to the state government, and only 3% of all the taxes, including the 60 all new ones here in Victoria, we only get 3% of that pie. But we deliver most of the services and most of the infrastructure. So I've learned quite a lot there, and I think the once a year professional development is a great asset for new councillors, current councillors, and staff alike. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek, and you had the good fortune of the clock not being started into your presentation, so we were able to enjoy the entirety of your presentation. So
that's right. That's right, Mayor. I've had grace over the year that you've given me, so thank you.
All good, no trouble. Thank you very much for sharing all of that with us, Councillor Sypek. We might follow that with Councillor Hamish Jones's presentation on the same conference, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, like my colleague Councillor Sypek, I also attended the Australian Local Government Association's National General Assembly in June up in Canberra, along with 1,100 of our local government representatives across the country. It was a great opportunity to advocate collectively to the federal government, as well as sharing practical approaches and advice with each other. My colleague mentioned a couple of the major focuses already. There was a big focus on the campaign to restore financial assistance grants to 1% of revenue and financial sustainability across the sector. For me, some of the key outcomes and discussion points were a focus on asset renewal as part of our infrastructure spend. I think that's becoming incredibly important, especially here in Moonee Valley, but it's important across the country, and that comes into financial sustainability. As my colleague mentioned, housing and population growth is also something that we are planning for, and there were plenty of discussions about that. I think it's a great opportunity for professional development, opportunity to learn from what other councils are doing, and it helps me to improve my role, bringing those roles back to Moonee Valley. It gives us a voice on the national stage in terms of collective national advocacy on issues that are important to all in the local government sector. I think it's valuable for Moonee Valley. I think as a council we should continue to participate in some of this national voice and continue to bring back what we learn at a national scale back to Moonee Valley. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Are there any other councillors with presentations this evening? Councillor John Barnes, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to announce that I have recently been pre-selected by the One Nation Party for the upcoming state election on the 28th of November for the seat of Essendon. I have informed the CEO of this and will nominate to take leave of absence at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John Barnes. And Councillor Phil Byrne, did you have some presentations as well?
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of presentations. The first one was just in relation to Wurundjeri Week and the Welcome to Country and Smoking ceremony that was held over at Queen's Park on the 4th of August. Wurundjeri Week is an important time to recognise the continuing connection of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people to country, culture and community. It provides a dedicated moment for Council to acknowledge the traditional owners, support reconciliation and promote learning across the organisation and the broader community. And it was a terrific event, and it was great to be there with Councillor Jones and also our Chief Executive Officer and also the federal member for Maribyrnong, Joe Brisky, came along to that as well, which was good. The second presentation, Mayor, is in relation to the Clock Tower Centre's morning music program, and I'm fortunate enough to have attended a few of these on your behalf. And the session on the 4th of August was a special show presented by the graduating students from the Victorian College of the Arts, so pretty special to get to. The students took to the stage to present the Golden Age of Broadway, a brilliant celebration of the glamour hits of Broadway. Over 300 audience members gathered to watch this spectacular show, and what a terrific community asset we have in the Clock Tower Centre and the performances that are on there that we get in. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Phil Byrne. Do we have any other presentations? Not this evening. Thanks all. We'll move on to petitions and joint letters then. So we have a number of petitions and joint letters on our agenda this evening. The first petition and joint letter is to improve safety on Garnet Street, Ida Street intersection, Niddrie. Would a councillor like to present that? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. A petition was received from 27 signatories comprising of local residents and Niddrie Autistic School parents requesting that Moonee Valley City Council install speed humps at the Garnet Street, Ida Street intersection to reduce vehicle speeds and improve safety for residents, pedestrians, cyclists and motorists. The petition states that speeding vehicles pose an ongoing safety risk in the area and calls on Council to prioritise installation of speed humps as soon as practicable to slow traffic and improve neighbourhood safety.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. The next petition and joint letter on the agenda is a request for resident permit parking at Patterson Street and Holberg Street, Moonee Ponds. And Councillor Cosgriff, would you like to present this one?
Thank you, Chair. A petition was received from 13 residents at Patterson Street and Holberg Street, Moonee Ponds, requesting the introduction of a resident permit parking scheme on the residential side of Patterson Street and for properties at 28 and 30 Holberg Street during peak sporting periods associated with the Moonee Valley Football Club and Ormond Park. The proposed operating times are Friday 5 p.m. to 9 p.m, Saturdays 8 a.m. to 5 p.m, and Sundays 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The petition requests that the substantial off-street and perimeter parking at Ormond Park, which is often underutilised, be encouraged whilst protecting residential car parks through a permit system to address the access and safety concerns and impacts on residential amenity. The petition also requests visitor parking provisions and a review of the effectiveness following an appropriate trial period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. Our third one is a joint letter, container deposit scheme and glass recycling, and I think Councillor Philburn is going to present this one. Thanks, Councillor Philburn.
Thank you, Mayor. A joint letter was received by the Rethinking Waste Collective and Moonee Valley Sustainability, highlighting the challenges with the rollout of the glass purple bin. These include added costs, space issues and infrequent collection. The letter calls for alternate solutions, expanding the container deposit scheme, CDS, to better support a circular economy. Further, the letter urges Council to advocate for improved CDS refund points, a higher refund amount, inclusion of more container types and targeted strategies for low return areas. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Philburn. The next petition is a request for additional streetlights on Laura Grove, Avondale Heights, and Councillor Theocrides is going to present this one. Are you with us, Councillor Theocrides?
I am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor. A petition was received from 13 local residents requesting Moonee Valley City Council to install 2 additional streetlights on Laura Grove, Avondale Heights between numbers 9 and 21. The petitioners state that the section is currently serviced by a single streetlight at number 15, which is currently not operating. It states that even when functioning, the existing lighting is insufficient for the approximately 200-metre section of roadway and footpaths, creating visibility and safety concerns for pedestrians, cyclists and motorists. The petitioners request Council consider installing 2 additional streetlights to improve visibility and enhance safety for all road users.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Now, I've just realised that these speaking notes don't have the usual reference to the CEO, so I'm going to do it in bulk at the end. Yes, that's my mistake. We're going to move to the next petition, and then I'll move them all at the end. Thank you. And it's my mistake, not the mistake of the speaking notes. I do apologise. I've skipped over a phrase in each of them in my effort to make sure that we get through everything. So we'll move to the next one, which is the Save Ormond Park, and Councillor Jones is going to...
Thank you, Mayor. An electronic petition organised by the Essendon Royal Soccer Club has been received with a total of 1,240 signatures, including approximately 561 from Moonee Valley. In good faith and in the spirit of reaching a constructive outcome, the petition requests that, in relation to Ormond Park, Council 1. Tender the repair works to test the actual costs through the open market. 2. Defer any demolition decision until the tender process is complete and considered publicly by Council. And 3. Retain Ormond Park as a soccer field, regardless of what happens to the pavilion. The petition is also supported by an open letter from the President of the Essendon Royals Soccer Club on behalf of the Executive and members, and this is presented to Council under Governance Rule 62.4.
Thank you. And to correct my own error, I'm going to ask that petition 6.1, 6.2, joint letter 6.3, petition 6.4 and petition 6.5 that in accordance with Governance Rule 62.5, these are all referred to the CEO for consideration, and I hope that meets our Governance Rule requirement, and I will make sure that I'm reading my notes a little bit more carefully for the rest of the meeting. Good to have that reminder early on. All right. Well, thank you to everyone who's engaged with Council by signing petitions. It's always a good way to bring issues to the attention of councillors and Council. That brings us to public question time, which is item 7 on our agenda. And we have quite a few questions this evening. We've got 12 public questions. The first 2 questions are from Dr. Spencer Casimir, who is here, I believe, I saw. Yep, so Dr. Casimir, if you might be able to approach the lectern and read your first pre-submitted question, and then the CEO will respond to that, and then I'll ask you to read your second question, if that's okay.
Sure. 100 residents petitioned for Edna.
11 of the 18 community suggestions for Section B were Edna. Council's ballot offered 4 names suggested by nobody. The law leaves council to define for themselves what community consultation means, and this process shows that discretion becomes what that discretion becomes. A consultation where the community answers are collected, counted, and discarded. What does community consultation mean in Moonee Valley, and why has council encouraged community to engage just to dismiss community's input?
Thank you, Dr. Casimir, and I will refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Dr. Casimir. Susan Mayer. Community consultation provides residents and stakeholders with an opportunity to contribute the views, preferences, and local knowledge to inform council decision-making. This feedback is an important consideration in council's deliberations. However, importantly, it is only one of the factors that must be taken into account. A number of other considerations include relevant statutory requirements, naming rules, culture and historical considerations, technical assessments, and the broader public interest. Council acknowledges that many community members suggested the name Edna. However, the purpose of consultation is not solely to determine the most popular option. Council must also assess proposed names against naming rules, relevant policies, and other considerations before determining which names proceed for further consideration. Council recognizes that some community members may be disappointed that Edna was not selected for further consideration. The assessment identified the name Edna has a strong link to the existing average street nearby and would constitute over-recognition and therefore non-compliance with the naming rules. For these reasons, the name Edna was not supported by Geographic Names Victoria and was not progressed further in Council's deliberations. Council is committed to meaningful and authentic community engagement now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. So Dr. Casimir, would you like to now read your second pre-submitted question?
Yes, especially in light of the Tier 3 internal review going on, question 2 seems very germane. Council allowed Aspen Street to be severed twice over the last 3 decades, first by Moonee Pond Central and again by Mason Square, and for years left emergency services, deliveries, and visitors confused guessing which Aspen Street on which they were needed. Residents had to petition council to fix council's own planning legacy, as mentioned in question 1. Why did it take a petition, and why was the community that solved council's problem then cut out of the solution in the way spoken about in question 1?
Thank you very much, Dr. Casimir, and I will again refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Dr. Casimir. Susan Mayer. Council acknowledges that some historical development decisions within the municipality have resulted in some street naming arrangements that do not meet current naming rules and have created confusion for residents, visitors, delivery services, and emergency services. Council prioritizes the review of street naming issues when safety concerns are raised by emergency services, Australia Post, residents, or other affected parties. In this case, community feedback and the petition highlighted the impact of the existing arrangement and prompted Council to consider a renaming process. And thank community for doing that. Once a renaming process commenced, Council was required to follow the statutory road naming requirements and a consultation process. These requirements informed how community input was gathered and considered as part of the decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and that's the end of the questioning. Thank you so much, Dr. Casimir. We need to leave it now. Thank you.
Oh, I was going to say thank you, but we can have your way, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Casimir. The next 4 questions relate to planning application MV/517/2026 in accordance with Governance Rule 6110, which states that like questions may be grouped together and a single answer provided. All 4 questions will be heard consecutively and then a single response will be provided. So the first of those 2 questions are from Jaya Talbolt, who is here this evening. Thank you, Jaya. Would you like to move to the lectern and ask both of your pre-submitted questions? Thank you so much.
Regarding planning application MV5/517/2026, what alternatives to the removal of the 2 40-year-old native bunya pines in Queen's Park, currently protected by local and state government canopy tree policy, have been rigorously explored to problem solve alleged shading issues on the bowling green, in alignment with responsible strategic assessment and reasonable community expectations? And if not, why not?
And if you'd like to read your second question as well. Thank you, Jan.
And question 2. Given that the 2 bunyas marked for removal via MV/517/2026 are on public Crown land and are of botanical historical significance, being propagated from Baron von Müller's original 1865 stock, gifted to first establish Queen's Park, what formal public consultation process will be made available, particularly as no exemptions to advertising exist in this case?
Thank you, Jaya. And so as I was saying, given the similar nature of these questions, a single response will be provided after the 4 questions have been heard. So thank you so much for asking your 2 questions. It's greatly appreciated. The next 2 questions are from Sam Talbot Cannon, who is not here this evening. And so on behalf of Sam, I'll read his questions, the first of which is that permit application MV/517/2026 plans to remove 2 established bunya pines in Queen's Park due to shading issues allegedly impacting the adjacent Bowls Green. So what assessment of shade casting, shadow diagram analysis over the different seasons at different times of the day, correlating with the time and use of the green, have been conducted to inform responsible decision making? And Sam's second question reads, considering that the 2 bunya pines planned for removal in MV/517/2026 are valuable living assets for our community now and could remain so well into the future, what is the current annual monetary return for council on the lease of the bowling club for rational comparative analysis of the irreversible impact of their removal? So thank you for submitting those questions, Sam, and for yours, Jaya, and I'll now refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, for the combined response to those 4 questions.
Thank you, Jaya and Sam. Through the Mayor, the application has only recently been lodged and allocated to a planning officer for assessment. No assessment of the proposal has been undertaken at this stage. Council, as the responsible authority, will consider the merits of the application against the relevant considerations of the Moonee Valley planning scheme, including whether advertising of the application will be required under Section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. So the next 2 questions are from, so I'm reading my notes very carefully now so that I don't miss things. The next 2 questions are from Francesco Patti, who is joining us this evening. No? intended to join us this evening. I will read Francesco's pre-submitted questions. The first is, how are visitors to Sandown Road to know that they are parking in the city of Moonee Valley? Thank you, Francesco, and I'll refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Francesco. Susan Mayor. Parking signage is provided at multiple locations along Sandown Road within the city of Moonee Valley, outlining the applicable parking conditions and restrictions to follow within the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. So Francesco's second question is if council is getting calls constantly regarding parking issues, isn't it clear that we have an issue with parking and that something needs to be done about it? So thank you for your submitted question, Francesco, and I will refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Francesco. Sue, the Mayor. Managing parking demand in streets around the Flemington Racecourse and Melbourne Showgrounds is challenging, particularly during major events. Council works closely with the Victorian Racing Club, Melbourne Royal, and other stakeholders to minimise these impacts. Measures implemented include traffic management plans, parking permits, road closures, and increased parking enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Now, the next two questions are from Ray Birch, who is not with us this evening. So Ray's first question reads, given the ongoing individual and insurance subrogation claims being brought against MVCC over stormwater flooding, can the CEO, Helen Swee, confirm whether MVCC and its lawyers are meeting their obligations under Sections 18 and 24 of the Civil Procedure Act, that each claim response has a proper basis and that legal costs are reasonable and proportionate to the amounts in dispute? Every dollar spent defending these claims is a dollar not spent fixing the drainage failures causing them. Residents deserve an answer. Can the CEO confirm compliance, and if not, explain why? Thank you, Ray. I'll refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Ray. Susan Mayor, I confirm that Council has appropriate processes in place to ensure it meets its statutory obligations when managing compensation claims made against Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And Ray's second question reads, given the individual and insurance subrogation claims being brought against MVCC over stormwater flooding, will the CEO appoint an independent municipal monitor under the Local Government Act to review MVCC's legal spending on these claims? If not, what will the CEO do to ensure ratepayer funds are being spent lawfully rather than continuing to fund disputes residents continue to ask to be resolved? Thank you, Ray. I refer to the CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Ray. Susan Mayor, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, the Minister for Local Government may appoint a person to be a municipal monitor to a council. The CEO does not have the authority to appoint a municipal monitor. As CEO, I am responsible for ensuring the effective and efficient management of Council's day-to-day operations, including ensuring that ratepayer funds are spent lawfully and responsibly in the best interest of the community as a whole. In discharging this duty, Council ensures that compensation claims made against Council are assessed fairly and managed appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. The last two questions are from Josephine Scacciatano, who is not joining us this evening. Josephine's first question reads, regarding the racecourse development, Simmels Management, due to the fact that we are affected in our area, do we have access to the construction and site management plan approved by MVCC for works carried out by Simmels? Page 4, number 1, noise and vibration. What has Simmels implemented to reduce noise and especially vibrations affecting residents on Dean Street? Simmels monitoring the vibration on site does not contain the vibration travelling beyond the boundary. Thank you for your question, Josephine, and I'll refer to the CEO, Helen Sweet, to respond.
Thank you, Josephine. Susan Mayer. Access to the approved construction and site management plan can be requested via Council's website. Simmels undertakes continuous vibration monitoring. If vibration levels increase and approach thresholds, an automatic alert is triggered. Prompting works to stop and be reassessed to identify opportunities to reduce impacts. Noise levels are also continuously monitored to ensure compliance with EPA construction noise limits. Alerts are issued when levels approach thresholds, allowing activities to be reviewed. For ongoing noise sources, such as generators, noise blankets are used to minimize impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Josephine's second question reads, once again, due to the fact that our daily lives have been affected, page 7, number 3, dust management and controls, since commencement of works, why hasn't Simmels installed mesh fences and covering for the approximately 4 metre high dirt piles on site? Sending street sweepers to stir up the dust does not help. Wednesday, 19th of the 8th, 26. Wind gusts of 63 kilometres per hour, described as gale winds. I have photos and videos to confirm my questions and comments. Thank you for your question, Josephine. I'll refer to CEO Helen Sweet to respond.
Thank you, Josephine. Susan Mayer. Simmels continuously manages dust through measures such as polymers, water carts, street sweepers, and crushed rock. While shade cloth may provide some visual screening, it is not a recognized dust mitigation measure. Continuous air quality monitoring tracks dust levels and alerts site supervisors when elevated levels are detected. The monitors also measure wind speeds with no excessive wind events recorded. Council officers also undertake ongoing compliance inspections to ensure works are carried out in accordance with the approved construction and site management plan and permit conditions. Any identified compliance issues are investigated and addressed as required. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you to all of those who have submitted questions for us this evening. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is report from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports from delegates? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week I attended the Melbourne Royal Consultative Committee for the regular meeting that we have there to consider and address the amenity impacts associated with our event, with the events that are held at the showgrounds and at Flemington Racecourse. It was a pretty solid and constructive meeting as we sort of start to get a bit close to the show and as we get close to the broader events period. And as we know, the events are terrific to have them there, and they're well utilised by the community, but Moonee Valley does seem to bear the brunt of the off-site impacts of those, despite the showgrounds and Flemington Racecourse being in the city of Melbourne and covered by the City of Melbourne planning scheme. But we also have, as one of the questions alluded to, the responsibility for car parking and those sorts of things. So a very productive meeting, and we had a significant team there from VRC as well as the showgrounds to ensure that we are appropriately dealing with both venues. And whilst it does appear that sometimes things are a little 2 steps forward, 1 step back, there's definitely a significant amount of will to improve the situation for the Moonee Valley residents. So yeah, so we'll keep representing our residents' interests at those meetings. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phil Byrne. It's an important issue for residents in both of our wards, and do appreciate all of the stakeholders who attend those meetings to help us work through the issues that are regularly raised. So thank you very much for the report back. Are there any other councillors who would like to report back from their delegated duties? No? In which case we come to the reports for the evening. And our first report is item 9.1, which is the completion of the Bugaroo Jering Reconciliation Plan 2022 to 2025. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Is there a motion? Councillor Cosgriff.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amendment, which is to remove point 2 and renumber point 3 to point 2.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgriff. Is there a seconder for that motion? Is there a seconder? Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Cosgriff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to start by acknowledging the work of the collective work of staff across Moonee Valley City Council in collaboration with the Wurundjeri elders, community members, Aboriginal organisations and partners to implement this plan and policy that I don't have, but that that has come to its conclusion. The purpose of the amendment is simply because I don't believe we need to rescind it. The same way we don't rescind an annual plan when it's completed, we kind of note and celebrate it and signpost what's next. But I think that's sufficient. And I also think it's more transparent not to rescind our documents in this kind of ongoing journey we have of reconciliation in this case. To the kind of the substantive, the report, some of the achievements that came through the Bugaroo Jering Reconciliation Plan and the Reconciliation Policy were our inaugural Welcome Baby to Country ceremony, which was strengthening and celebrating connection to country from the earlier stages of life for our young community members. The continuation of Bunjil's Mooron Healing Ceremony, which has a wonderful turnout each year, and it provides a really lovely space and time for the whole community to come together and reflect and heal and learn about the history of Moonee Valley, both recent and very ancient history. And we also have progressed our Stolen Generations marker project, which we recently announced we'll be putting at Napier Park in Strathmore. So I guess I am very happy to move that we note the completion and all the achievements of this this plan and policy, and I think it's important to note that it marks a milestone, not an end point in our reconciliation journey, and I look forward to the next stages of this, the development of our First Peoples Self-Determination Strategy in collaboration with our recently established Murra Wirigiri First Peoples Advisory Committee and the broader Aboriginal community. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. I would. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri elders and the community for their ongoing guidance, support and warmth as we continue on our path towards reconciliation, and also the opportunity to learn about our past, which was certainly not taught when I was a kid. Also want to acknowledge the work of the officers in supporting the delivery of the plan to date and the initiatives that are in that plan. The ones that Councillor Cosgriff referred to and the many other ones. It remains an objective of our council plan is a city that respects and values First Peoples, their knowledge, their history, culture, and that supports self-determination. The officer's report acknowledges the completion of one phase, and as we transition into the next stage of council's relationship with its First Peoples. I support the officer's report, and I do support this amendment to the officer's recommendation. I support the amendment, removing the word rescind, as I see council's reconciliation plan as a foundation to build on for the next stage of reconciliation, and our shared future and history, rather than a sort of point in time that has come and gone and sort of warrants a formal cancellation or revocation, and all those words that sort of come with a word like rescind. So a minor but important change to the officer's recommendation in my view. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be voting against the proposed motion. I'd like to flag that I will be moving the officer's recommendation if this motion fails. I do think that the officers put in the section about the rescinding of the policy and plan for a reason, and it concerns me that it may impact negatively on future works. So, like I said, as discussed, I will be voting against the motion in its current form, but happy to move the officer's recommendation should this not get up.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
Mayor, could you just talk up a little bit? You're sort of fading in and out a little bit, and I can't see Councillor Theocrides as well. I must be having technical difficulties right now.
It's Councillor Theocrides was there a moment ago, and here she is again. There you are.
Great.
I will speak up a little bit. Now I've lost you, Councillor Sypek. Are you still there? Did you want to speak to the motion? I think that's you've got your microphone off, Councillor Sypek.
Yeah, I just wanted to, if you could just speak up, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sypek. I apologise. It's I think it's either too loud or too soft with these microphones. I can't get it quite right. Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Cosgriff, would you like a right of reply?
Yeah, just briefly, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the concerns, and I read through the report very carefully, and there was no talking points in the actual report to the reason for the rescission. But I did just want to reassure people that under our governance rules, Division 6, Section 54.1, that a rescission is not required where council wishes to change a policy, in the case that it's a policy is being concluded. So we don't. I'm confident that we don't run the risk of not being able to move into our next phase given this phase. Yeah, that's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgriff. And so I will now put that to the vote. We've got Councillor Sypek and Councillor Paula Theocrides on the screen, so that's good. So we can put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that is Councillor Paula Theocrides, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Fran Cosgriff and Councillor Isa. And all those against, Councillor Jones, Councillor Sypek and Councillor Barnes. So that motion is carried. Now the next item, there were a number of flagged conflicts of interest. So I'll just ask councillors who flagged conflict of interest if they would like to declare their conflict. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to declare a general conflict of interest on item 9.2, as it was recently made aware to me that the debate may include conversations in regards to the upcoming state election, of which I am a pre-selected candidate for.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha. And Councillor John Barnes?
Same as Councillor Samantha Byrne, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John Barnes. Is that sufficient under our governance rules? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor John Barnes, and sorry for just making sure that everything's done by the book, so to speak. So we have the officer's recommendation on the screen for item 9.2, which is the endorsement of draft housing strategy background report, and draft activity centre framework for community consultation. So the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Is there a motion? Councillor Cosgriff.
Thank you. I would like to move an alternative, please. Alternative or amendment?
I think it's an alternative.
Yeah, I think so. And sorry, you need me to read the whole thing?
Yeah, if you just can just read.
Absolutely.
Or just read the points 1 and 3, I think would suffice.
Sure. So it's the officer's recommendation with changes to points 1 and 3 being that Council resolves to, point 1, endorse the draft Moonee Valley Housing Strategy August 2026 (attachment 1) for the purpose of community consultation, with consultation to commence in late 2026 or early 2027 following the Victorian state election to avoid potential community confusion, misinterpretation or politicisation that could affect the integrity of the engagement process, and due to some councillors having declared their candidacy for the state election. And point 3 reads, endorse the Moonee Valley Activity Centre's framework and built form guidance, August 2026 (attachment 3), for the purpose of community consultation, with consultation to commence in late 2026 or early 2027 following the Victorian state election to avoid potential community confusion, misinterpretation or politicisation that could affect the integrity of the engagement process, and due to some councillors having declared their candidacy for the state election. And points 2, 4, 5 and 6 as per the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgriff. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Philburn. Councillor Cosgriff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Absolutely. I would like to start by thanking officers for the enormous amount of work that has gone into this process and these documents, which I don't have, but they are a whopping stack of documents. I didn't print them because it seemed bad for the environment. These documents, so our housing strategy, the housing strategy background report, and the activity centre's framework and built form guidance are the culmination of 2 years of project work at council, including technical analysis, 2 rounds of community engagement or forums, and expert advice from external and internal experts. And together they form the strategic evidence-based foundation for changes that we might make in the future to the Moonee Valley planning scheme. Now the next step is community consultation, and I absolutely support that occurring, and I'm very excited for our community to get to see these documents and to get to give us their feedback. I'm proposing that the consultation occurs following the state election in November, though, because maybe sounds far away, but we're less than 100 days out from what will be a very robust state election, I'm sure. And planning is a complicated enough space that involves, federal and state and local government policies and controls, and it's a very hot topic in state matters, and I would just hate to see all of this work after 2 years maybe be misinterpreted, and for us to not miss out on the opportunity to get the feedback that's relevant to the local government planning matters that we're trying to address. So that's the reason for the deferral. I acknowledge the risks that officers have outlined in the report in terms of delays, that a delay to the community engagement means a delay to any potential policy changes that we might get to make further down the track. However, given the length of time we've been working on this for more than 2 years, and given that it's a strategic document about planning until 2051 in Moonee Valley, I feel that the delay is reasonable and proportionate to try and get the best quality feedback we can, or engagement rather. And importantly, it's not indefinite, and it's not an attempt to not consult with the community. It's that I want to see that consultation be as rich and purposeful and focused on what we can actually control as possible. I really wish I had printed them out, but a few things that I wanted to highlight about the documents is that they're not the result of more houses being imposed on Moonee Valley, which is sometimes a bit of a sentiment that comes up. The report is very clear that Moonee Valley's current planning scheme provides sufficient capacity for the state government housing targets. These documents are about directing the housing growth to the most well-located areas in Moonee Valley, where we can support increased density, which of course with time and increased population is what happens. And along with that, once we can get the feedback and then progress on getting these out of draft form and into an endorsed form, means that where we know where we can direct growth to support it, we can also start planning for it as well, and ensuring that our services and infrastructure provisions and everything is that we can provide to support people in those areas. Of course, you need infrastructure and appropriate services for increased density, so this is a mechanism by which we can do that more clearly and more efficiently. So these are the housing strategy is really a long-term framework looking well into the future of Moonee Valley, and I'm very excited to put it out to the community, but as per my alternative, with the caveat of it being after the kind of hype and excitement of our imminent state election.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. I was trying to ring the bell there at 30 seconds and it was a bit of a muted ring, I'm afraid. I'll have to fix that. Thank you. Councillor Philburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Cosgriff, for the amendment. I very much support the work that's been done by officers in this important work, and I just want to thank and acknowledge their efforts in getting us to this point. If you don't have a plan, then you're planning to fail, and the fact remains that Moonee Valley is an area that will be in demand for future growth. We're close to the CBD, we're close to Melbourne Airport, we're close to the Calder Freeway, we've got excellent schools, excellent amenities, and we've got a whole cohort of young people who want to leave home and remain close to their family and friends. And why wouldn't you in Moonee Valley? It's a terrific space. So those pressures will always be there. And without this important work, there's the increased risk of ad hoc development outcomes. So too high or too dense in the wrong locations for development, or in areas that are well serviced, underdevelopment or poor development. And the work is important to ensure that we're always, ahead of the game with regards to those ad hoc outcomes. And it's important to ensure that council's ability to influence where and how housing growth occurs remains, and not just completely leave that open. And that's a core function of what council does. This work's got some history to it, noting that it was flagged in the 2024-25 council plan, and more recently has had matters such as housing targets and the flood overlays added to it. Generally, I'm pretty keen to crack on with work like this and if it's ready, get it going and getting out the door and so forth. There's always something. So, but I think in this case, for the reasons that Councillor Cosgriff has outlined, the timing's not perfect. I mean, it's never perfect, but the timing's not ideal, I guess, to engage with large parts of the municipality on those important documents. And for me, it's just not worth risking the excellent work that's been done and the overall strategy through a consultation process that potentially could be fine or could potentially be politicised or at least a little bit confused. To me, the work's too important and risks can be addressed by starting the engagement in probably about 90 days' time. Thanks, Mayor. So I support the amendment.
Thanks very much, Councillor Philburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting the current amendment, and I would like to flag an alternative motion if it's not successful. I don't support deferring consultation till after the state election. I think it's gets the sequencing backwards and adds to confusion. The draft documents are already out in front of the community. I've already had significant feedback since the agenda went out last week, and so community feedback is already happening. I think that residents, now that they've seen the documents, deserve the right to tell us now what they think. By going to consultation, we're not adopting the housing strategy, it's not approving a planning scheme amendment, it's not accepting every assumption in these documents going forward. It is already a long-term process. The report explicitly mentions a 7-week community consultation process which can deal with any confusion that may come up. And the consultation does not necessarily represent the final position of council. I don't think there's anything to gain by waiting. We've got a state government that has imposed the housing target of 47,500 additional dwellings. Yes, the housing strategy suggests we've already got enough room in the planning scheme for this, and yes, it makes some suggestions on where this may be better aligned going forward. These are suggestions that we've put out to the community already. They've seen the documents. They may disagree, and it's their right to do so. There might be an election, there might be a change of government, there might be a change in state planning policy, but none of this prevents us asking what our residents think today. If the state policy changes after the election, we choose whether or not we want to respond to the change. If the government changes, we respond to the new government. If the targets change, we consider whether our strategy is relevant to new targets. Consultation is not irreversible as circumstances change. I think that I don't see why political change should prevent democratic participation here in Moonee Valley from residents through the consultation process. I think the opposite applies, and I think it's important that we let residents have their say now. I think it's important that they tell council what they think about these proposals. I think it's important that they tell us what they think about increased density in the areas identified in the reports and papers, what they think about neighbourhood character, what they think about infrastructure, what they think about open space, and where they think housing growth should occur. If they don't like the targets that the state government have set for Moonee Valley, they should be telling them too. Thank you, Mayor. So I think, it's worth going out to consultation and considering the views of the community now. I'd much rather that we start this process and get it moving forward. For that reason, I won't be supporting this motion, and again, just like to flag that I do have an alternative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones, and flagging noted. Thanks for that. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to say a few words.
Yep, got you, Councillor Sypek. All yours.
Thank you, Mayor. The housing strategy, I think planning is a very crucial part of most councils, and with all the current debacle with all these planning initiatives and housing initiatives throughout all the many councils, it's always in the forefront of news and the forefront of people's minds. I too have been contacted by many people, and I think by deferring it after an election, I think by deferring it, we're actually politicising it. And the reason given where there's confusion about councillors having declared candidacy, that's the whole idea of councillors declaring their candidacy, is to not cause confusion by that, to make sure that there is a separation. there is no misinterpretation here. We have the community. The community are absolutely breaking out, wanting to give us feedback, wanting to give us their views on the housing strategy. So I too am a bit perturbed that we're going to defer it till after the election, because I think there are a lot of things that are being deferred to after the election, and I don't want to be seen as to be trying to hide behind an election. There's nothing wrong here. Let's just get it out there. Let the community come to us. That's what the whole idea of consultation is. Get the community come to us. And I don't see that the community will get confused by this. I think we have a very smart and intellectual community that understand what's going on here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Will any other councillor like to speak to the motion? In which case I'll offer Councillor Cosgriff a right of reply.
Thank you. And thanks for the discussion and the points. I absolutely agree that planning is essential and for our success in Moonee Valley into the future, and that consultation and residents telling us what they think about all of the above, neighbourhood character, increased density, building typology is very important, infrastructure services. I thank my colleagues for their points, and I think the passion that comes up when we speak about it is probably evidence to what I'm concerned about at putting it out in this point in time. Like, it's a very impassioned topic in our community, and it often gets, there's a lot of kind of anxiety around it and fear, and it's certainly a hot topic in kind of state campaigns and politics. And this work is so, like, I really just scratch the surface of what's in here. It's so thoughtful, and it's so exciting, and I would hate for that to be lost in a consultation at a particular point in time, less than 100 days out from the election. I think anyone who's paying attention knows that campaigns are ramping up. Certainly our advocacy efforts ramp up here at Council. So I stand by the reason to delay that formal consultation, but I do, if community members are engaging with it, and I desperately want them to engage with it, or if they have questions, I would encourage them to reach out to their councillor or reach out to me as one of the councillors with your thoughts, and we can keep those and feed them into the process when it begins. But yeah, I think the passion around the table probably speaks to my concern about, I think cool heads should prevail in thoughtful planning, and that's my hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. So we can see Councillor Theocharides and Councillor Sypek, so I will put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? So we've got Councillor Theocharides, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Fran Cosgriff, Councillor Rose Isa. All those against? Councillor John Sypek and Councillor Hamish Jones. So that motion is carried, and we can bring back in the councillors who declared a conflict on that item. Thanks very much, officers. And while we're doing that, we might just pause for a moment while we bring back in two of our councillors. Is my volume okay for you now, Councillor Sypek? Getting the nod. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne and Councillor Barnes. We're going to move now to item 9.3, which is the endorsement of the local area traffic management study union precinct, and the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. So is there a motion? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move an alternative motion.
Yes, by all means.
The alternative motion is an amendment to, or a change to the officer's recommendation, and that is that Council resolves to paragraph 1 on the screen then as read, paragraph 2 being amended to read, adopt the final traffic management plan for implementation, brackets attachment 4, with the following changes. Paragraph A, commence installation of bus-capable speed humps on Francis Street, Ascot Vale between Union Road and Rothwell Street. And paragraph B, upgrade the existing speed hump to a raised crossing or install a pedestrian crossing immediately north of the speed hump on the Crescent Ascot Vale immediately south of St Leonard's Road intersection. Paragraphs 3 and 4 being taken as read. Paragraph 5 being amended to read as follows. Note that property owners and occupiers and other stakeholders, brackets, including but not limited to traders associations, Homes Victoria, Wingate Community Centre and the like, brackets, within the Union Precinct will be advised of the outcome of this report. Include paragraph 6, which reads, note the report requested in Council Motion 2026/64 on active transport matters may have recommendations relating to traffic and parking management within the Union Precinct. Insert paragraph 7. Review parking arrangements for Rosebery Street, Ascot Vale, brackets, between Union Road and Ferguson Street, and undertake targeted consultation 6 months following the reopening of Coronation Kindergarten. Insert paragraph 8. Request the CEO or delegate to write to the principal of St Mary's Primary School regarding the recommendation in the final parking management plan to extend the school drop-off zone subject to a suitable access gate being installed by the school for the school's consideration. Insert paragraph 9. Note that Council and the Department of Transport and Planning are working towards improving the safety of the Milton Street and Maribyrnong Road intersection with regard to extending the Keep Clear across Maribyrnong Road, changing parking restrictions immediately east of Milton Street, and activation of the pedestrian signals to the west of Milton Street from vehicles in Milton Street. And paragraph 10, note that the reactivation of Union Square on the western side of Union Road was raised in feedback on the Union Latham, and request that an evaluation of past interventions and future feasibility of activating this site as public or community space to complement the refurbished Ascot Vale Library be undertaken by officers with subsequent report to Council by February 2027. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Fran Cosgriff. Were there any... So I should have just asked if there were any questions about the motion or any... I was watching as carefully as I could with respect to the wording. Were there any questions from governments or anyone else around the wording? No? Okay. Thank you. Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. The final traffic management and parking management plan for Union Precinct follows significant traffic investigations, technical analysis and extensive community consultation. And I wanted to acknowledge all of the residents and businesses who contributed their views, and the many Francis Street, Rosebery Street, St Leonard's Road residents have expressed their concerns with me since I came to Council. And I also note the work of officers on this work and all of the other LATAMs and traffic work. It's there's a lot of community feedback, and there's a lot of pressures put on our officers, so I appreciate that. This LATAM improves safety. It reduces vehicle speeds and it addresses local parking. The most significant recommendation is the staged introduction of lower speed limits across the precinct, generally reducing local speeds from 50 kilometres an hour to 40 kilometres an hour. And this brings this small pocket in line with much of Moonee Valley. There's also proposed 30 kilometre an hour zones near schools, shopping areas and high pedestrian activity locations. This alternative motion starts from a position of strong support for the process, the findings and the recommendations of our officers. The alternate motion notes much of the work already underway to provide clarity of where this important work fits in and around the work stream associated with the LADM. Requires review of parking arrangements following the opening of the amazing Coronation Kinder for Term 1 in 2027. That part of Rosebery Street is under a lot of pressure from parking to service the shops on Union Road, as well as when the expanded Kinder opens as well. The motion also notes the potential reactivation of Union Square on the western side of Union Road that was raised in submissions mostly through the interactive map, and it just seeks to keep this work on our radar for future investigation. Just acknowledges that feedback that was raised. The alternate does, however, seek to bring forward speed humps for Francis Street, and this is based on the submissions supporting this being greater than those opposing in this particular location, not overall, but in the particular location, and the challenges of this particular street with regards to width, traffic volume, the bus route, and the vehicle speeds and the cut through from Epsom Road through to Ascot Vale Road that street provides. And it also clarifies the status of the pedestrian crossing on that on the crescent near Ascot Vale station. And I guess just in case if this alternate is not supported, I'll foreshadow moving the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Fran Cosgriff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I will briefly. I also want to thank officers for their work and the...
Sorry, if you could just pause for one moment, Councillor the clock was just a little slow in activating, so all good. All yours. Sorry.
Yes, thank officers for the work and the community for the engagement on this. I had lots of conversations about speed bumps. Yes. The LATMs, or the local area traffic management plans, are about making place-based decisions about how we can increase the amenity of an area and, most importantly, the safety on our local roads. And I am happy to support Councillor Phil Byrne's alternative. I note that a lot of the text is about noting different actions that are going on, and I think that speaks to the level of detail that the officers and I know the councillor went into with the community, and the level of detail the community gave back to us, which was wonderful. In terms of this was a really interesting one. So strong feedback in 2 rounds. I think to the draft traffic management plan we had 194 responses, I think. But prior to that we had reached out to over 6,000 owner-occupiers around the area. And it was interesting reading the report. Only 30% of survey respondents were in favour of the plan, some were neutral, many opposed. And similar for the parking, but then when you sort of dig down into the specifics, which is obviously important as sort of trying to emphasise as the point of these pieces of work, I think for the Francis Street speed hump we had 4 respondents in favour and 2 who didn't support it. And then, for a series of other things, we had numbers of 12 and 20 and 2. So it really speaks to the very particular interest that people have in these changes, which is, it's nice to be able to engage on that level. So yes, thank the officers for their work, and for Councillor Phil Byrne compiling it all and noting the things that we're doing and that we're not. And also I note the review in 6 months' time, which I think is particularly important after we implement these changes, to make sure that they are addressing the challenges we were hoping to. Just have a quick... Yep, that was all I want to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgriff. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. Could I please move an amendment?
Yes. You may.
Thank you. With the deletion of the yellow part in point 2 and changing it to after the bracket of 4 to read with the deletion of A, installation of 30 kilometres an hour speed limit on Union Road in brackets between Maribyrnong Road and Francis Street, Miriam Street. B, installation of 30 kilometre an hour speed limit on school frontages.
So if you can just pause for 1 second, I might just wait for governance to catch up with us there. Would you like Councillor Byrne to start again? Yes, sorry to ask Councillor Samantha Byrne, but would you mind just starting your amendment again so that governance can hear that clearly?
Sure. So, just for governance's reference, it's the wording that was pre-submitted. So after attachment 4, yes, that part that's on the screen. So after bracket 4, to read with the deletion of A, installation of 30 kilometre an hour speed limit on Union Road between Maribyrnong Road and Francis Street and Miriam Street, and B, installation of 30 kilometre an hour speed limit on school frontages, St Leonard's Road and Rosebery Street, and C, installation of speed humps. And the rest of the motion to read as per the substantive that Councillor Phil Byrne moved.
So, governance, I understand Councillor Samantha Byrne's motion to be the words in yellow on the screen currently to be inserted into the motion that's on the table, which is the motion that Phil Byrne moved. So if we might be able to cut those words out in yellow. Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to finish the sentence so that it's not me putting words into your out there?
I think governance are doing it.
I'm just very conscious that it's your
so
motion.
Then just changing over the yellow highlighted words there.
And we had some discussion earlier about whether this satisfies our definition of amendment, and just to step through it so that everyone's so that we can just work through that. Our rule for an amendment is that the amendment must not be the negative of or substantially contrary to the motion. And I think that because the motion is about adopting the final traffic management plan, I would consider a negative to be to not adopt the plan. So while I acknowledge that this amendment is negating a part of what Councillor Phil Byrne had in the motion, I think on balance it's not negating the whole motion. So just to explain my reasoning around that for anyone wondering. So I'm comfortable accepting that as an amendment to this motion. So is there a seconder for that motion?
Yeah, happy to second it, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor John Sypek. So Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to speak to that motion? To the amendment, I do apologise, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, I will. First of all, I would like to thank the officers for the amount of work that they did in this LADAM study, and they've done on previous LADAM studies as well. I always find them really interesting to read through, and my favourite part to read through is the community consultation and what our residents are actually saying. Now, what our residents have actually said when it comes to installation of 30km/h speed limits on Union Road between Maribyrnong Road and Francis Street, Miriam Street, is they absolutely do not want 30km/h speed limits there. 33 people said they did not want it, compared to 13 people who were supportive. 21 people said that they did not want installation of 30km/h speed limit on school frontages at St Leonard Roads and Rosebery Street, compared to only 12 people that were supportive. And yet somehow we're recommending to do it. Now, the officer, particularly for the St Leonard's Road and Rosebery Street ones, have included a recommendation that it could be incorporated. Alternatively, the existing 40km/h speed limits could be retained. So it does seem like it was a bit of a line ball one. Now, for one of these ones where it is a line ball one, I do not understand why we would not be going with what our residents have very, very clearly articulated. I'm mindful that before we were speaking about why we should be doing installation of bus-capable speed humps, and we're talking about, and how there was support for them, we're talking about 4 people being supportive and 2 people not. That is so insignificant compared to what I was mentioning before, which was 33 not and 13 supportive, and 21 not and 12 supportive. I'll now talk on the speed hump, the deletion of the speed humps, which had 15 people not supportive of them and 2 supportive of them. The comments from the officers in relation to the speed humps was that we could, after 6 months, we could review how the 40km/h speed limits are going and then consider speed humps. And that seems like a much more logical thing to do than just go ahead, spend a whole lot of ratepayer money on something that the ratepayers, I'm assuming in the local area, have said quite loud and clear that they don't want. So that is why I've put forward this alternative, and I seek your support.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. And Councillor John Sypek, I believe you were the seconder for this one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And the statistics that Councillor Byrne brought up was, I was going to say pretty much the same sort of thing. I too am concerned that, you know, we're going to be spending money putting in all these alterations and spending money when the actual community don't really want it. And secondly, I'm not a traffic officer. I haven't had any education in this, so I'm totally reliant on the officers. And that's why I would rather stick with the officers' recommendation here, because I'm not a traffic expert, and I'd like to leave this kind of stuff to the experts, and to the experts and to the community. And that's what we should be focusing on, and not focusing on basically, what would be the best way of describing this? Basically, you know, the squeaky wheel is the loudest voice here. So I would rather stick with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor John Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Fran Cosgriff.
Thank you. I do believe that only one of those 2 changes is in line with the officer's recommendation in the consultation report, not the 30km one, just as a point of, in terms of that. But you take the point, you know, really it's so great to have all the feedback from the community. We mailed out to 6,600 owner-occupiers in this area, inviting them to participate. And so, while 13 verse 33 and 21 verse 12 do one outweighs the other, they're, I guess we've got to consider them in proportion to the rest of the body of work that's happened and engagement. In terms of reducing speed limits around schools, I mean, take the point as well, but I just don't think safety of children around schools is a line ball decision. And going to so we did surveys before we started, and the traffic survey meters, I don't know what they're called, that we had on St Leonard's Road. So it had average of 600 vehicles per day, average speed 27 kilometres per hour. And on Rosebery Street we had just over 1,000 vehicles per day, average speed of 31 kilometres per hour. So it seems, sensible. People are already driving at 30 kilometres an hour, but to make that, I guess I'm not comfortable with line ball when we're talking about the safety of some of our most vulnerable pedestrians. I think, and in terms, that's what I guess too, I was speaking earlier about how it was a curious consultation report to read. The devil's really in the detail, as they say. So in terms of the speed bumps, yes, when we say to people, how do you feel about speed bumps? Again, out of 6,000 people, not a huge response, but generally when you specify no location, 2 people like speed bumps, 15 people do not. But then when you start suggesting particular locations for speed bumps, and the one that we're proposing to bring forward, twice as many people support it as they don't. And again, the numbers are 4 and 2. So, I do. I really appreciate the detail to attention, though, that we've all paid to the feedback from the community and that the officers have. But I don't support those amendments for those reasons. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgriff, and I apologise for missing your 30-second warning there. I was listening. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion, to the amendment? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I will just briefly, given that a lot of the points have already been made. The community response to the 30 kilometre an hour proposals was not ambiguous. It was clearly against the proposals. The consultant's own final traffic management plan identifies potentially the retention of the 40 kilometre speed limits, especially in the school zones, as an option that's available to us. And they're the 2 of the main reasons that I support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamish Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the amendment? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I will. I think in bringing this amendment, really what's happening here is Councillor Samantha Byrne is showing little interest in improving safety outside St Mary's Primary School, Coronation Kindergarten.
Point of order, Mayor, that's
Union Road.
That's a personal attack on another councillor, and they're making insinuations there. That's not acceptable.
I might ask you to withdraw that and rephrase. Thanks.
I'll withdraw that, Mayor.
Mayor, I'd like an apology, thanks.
With
point of order. I don't know what the point of order is, but thanks.
Okay, a withdrawal actually needs to be without qualification or explanation under our governance rules. So maybe we can deal with that outside of the debate and we can address that later. But the comment's been withdrawn and I've asked Councillor Phil Byrne to rephrase. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. And also happy to apologise if as well. The removal of these 30 zones is the removal of the 30 zones outside St Mary's Primary School, Coronation Kindergarten and Union Road shops. That is a fact. That is in the attachment to the officer's report. I will always support communities who live, walk and ride in their local streets over those driving through who might feel slightly inconvenienced. Why? Because of safety. Transport Victoria states a pedestrian struck at 30 k's has approximately a 90% chance of survival. At 40 k's the survival rate drops to about 60%, and at 50 kilometres an hour it falls to 10%. So let's keep that in mind when we think of the kids attending St Mary's Primary School when making decisions tonight. Infrastructure Victoria have reducing speeds to 30 k's on local streets, initially around schools, playgrounds, childcare centres and kindergartens, as part of their 30-year strategy recommendations, which is exactly what the officers are recommending in this LADM. Infrastructure Victoria also states that national and international research evidence is clear. Slower speeds make streets safer for children and communities. So let's keep this in mind tonight, knowing that kids will be attending the rebuilt Coronation Kindergarten from Term 1 2027, 30 zone proposed out the front of that as well. The Monash University Accident Research Centre looked at international examples, finding that Toronto had a 67% reduction in fatal and serious injuries following the introduction of 30k an hour zones, 46 for the same in London. So let's keep that in mind when we think about Union Road. With this evidence, any support given to removing the recommendation of these zones, in my view, is negligent and extremely dismissive of community safety, particularly that of vulnerable road users such as kids, pedestrians and cyclists. And what a terrible trade-off. No meaningful increase in travel times, as Infrastructure Victoria have also found. In addition to community safety, 30k an hour zones have also the added benefits of lower vehicle emissions, reduced noise and improved neighbourhood amenity. And who doesn't want that for our community? I get that feedback on traffic management measures will often result in a higher number of people wanting the status quo. This is well understood and known to the extent that many authorities are now applying an install now and a consult later approach so that communities are responding to lived experience where their views are sought. I get that it might be popular in some circles to rage against speed restrictions and road safety measures, but responding to rage over evidence and safety is not leadership, and we need to show a bit of leadership tonight and improve safety outcomes for the community, and I won't be supporting this amendment to the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. And Councillor Samantha Byrne, I have just checked the rules and it does actually say and or make a satisfactory apology to the meeting. So I know that Councillor Phil Byrne did make an apology, but I would ask whether that maybe you could just, given that I had the rule, that I misremembered that element of the rule, I would just ask if perhaps you could just make that appropriate apology now.
Thank you, Mayor. The comment that was withdrawn also comes with an apology. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? The amendment? In which case, I'll ask Councillor Samantha Byrne if you would like a right of reply.
Thank you. I will. I absolutely support safe streets. There are a lot of streets at the moment that are definitely not safe, but I don't think constantly looking over your speed dial and seeing that you're going 31 kilometres an hour and trying to ride your brakes is particularly going to make the streets safer. I don't think a policy of slow down and add a hump is a good policy, and I don't think we should be doing it, and that's why I've put forward this alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Sorry, amendment.
No, that's okay, and the clock hadn't started, so it doesn't matter though that we've finished, so that's all okay. And we've got Councillor Sypek and Councillor Theocharides on the screen, so I'm going to put the amendment to the vote. All of those in favour? That's Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor John Barnes, Councillor John Sypek, Councillor Hamish Jones. All of those against the amendment? That's Councillor Theocharides, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Fran Cosgriff, Councillor Rose Isa, and then being a tie, I will vote against the amendment with the casting vote. So that's lost on the casting vote of the Mayor. So that means we revert to the substantive motion that was moved by Councillor Phil Byrne. Now, Councillor Samantha Byrne, I think you moved your amendment at the beginning of speaking. Is my memory right on that? So you have the call to speak to the substantive motion.
Thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting the substantive motion. I don't think this is what the community wants. I don't think it's what the community needs. It's not their expectation. And I can't support going down to 30 kilometres an hour, and I won't be supporting it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the substantive motion? So far, Councillor Fran Cosgriff, Councillor Phil Byrne and Councillor Samantha Byrne have spoken to the substantive motion. Would any other councillor like to speak? In which case, I will go back to the mover, Phil Byrne, for a right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. Just I guess a brief one. We've spoken a lot in this place, and we continually speak a lot in this place about community safety, and we do that whether it's as we sort of get to our sort of extreme hot weather, or whether we talk about limbs falling from trees on people, or whether we talk about I'm not sure, get that time back with the hours we spent, maybe not hours, but the time we spent looking at the height of the cracks in footpaths and what triggers investigation there. So we're always constantly talking around safety. But when it gets to traffic management stuff, when we have clear fundamental evidence, we just seem to view things really differently, and it's a bit of a head scratcher. Really, the alternate motion that I've put up really just echoes the work of the officers, brings forward the speed humps in Francis Street, and it's all done through there's no other point to it than community safety. So I'm not sure I can add more than that. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. So I'll put the substantive alternative motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is Councillor Theocharides, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Fran Cosgriff, Councillor Rose Isa. All those against? Councillor Hamish Jones, Councillor John Sypek, Councillor John Barnes, Councillor Samantha Byrne, and again, being a tied vote, I'll cast the casting vote in favour of the substantive motion, so that is carried on the casting vote of the Mayor. And I would also just like to apologise for misremembering the rule, and hope that the apology that was made has been accepted and is satisfactory. I'm also just going to ask colleagues if we might, we've been going now for over 2 hours as a council, and I was wondering, colleagues, if we wouldn't mind just taking a 5-minute adjournment at this point, if that would be okay with everyone, just for a little bit of a breather. Thank you. We will see you in 5 minutes. Thanks for rejoining us, and apologise for that short break. We've just been going for a little while, so just giving everyone a break to come at our last few items afresh. So we were up to 9.4 in our reports, which is the 2026 Community Satisfaction Survey and Customer Experience Improvement Program 2026 to 27, and the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Do we have a motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second it, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, just briefly. So obviously, as the officer recommendation says, we're being asked to note the Community Satisfaction Survey report and the Customer Experience Improvement Program for 2026-2027. I think the overall result from the Community Satisfaction Survey is a great result, but it could still be better. The headlines are really good, but there are a couple of weaknesses that we can work on as well. Residents like the practical services that we offer. They like the waste service. They love our libraries and recreation services, and we're doing well there. But there are still some weak spots identified that we can continue to work on through value for rates, town planning, parking, governance, and other engagement processes. So yes, I think that we should move to note them, but we need to make sure that we're always working to improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As I concur with my colleague, Councillor Jones, this is a good dashboard indicator of what council and how council are interacting with the community. So, as Councillor Jones said, it is for noting. So, I'm happy to support this officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? In which case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. That brings us to item 9.5, place naming project renaming sections of Aspen Street, Moonee Ponds, decision. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Is there a motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, Move. I'd like to... sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move that Council resolves to defer the item to a future meeting of Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. And is
happy
that
to
a
second
hand
that,
because
Mayor.
you'd like to second it, Councillor Sypek? Quick off
Yes.
the mark there. Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I will. Look, some new information came to light in regards to this agenda item quite late, and as we're aware, the Ward Councillor, Councillor Adams, who I know is very much across this issue, is unfortunately unable to be with us tonight, and it would have been a conversation that I would have liked to have had with the Ward Councillor. We've been advised that there's no time pressures on this particular report coming to Council, and I think that this, considering it is such a significant thing to rename streets, that the smart and appropriate thing to do in this situation is to defer the item until a future meeting of Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor John Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. I'm also happy to defer this. I don't think there's any rush to expedite this whole process. I'm sure community consultation, like we've mentioned before with the housing strategy, community consultation is important. I think if we can basically exhaust every bit of consultation here, I'd be more than happy. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor John Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion?
Mayor, can I just request a super quick adjournment? I've just got a governance question on this particular matter that I wouldn't mind asking.
If you would prefer to ask it out of session, absolutely we can adjourn, but you can also ask a point of clarification if you would like to.
And I think it's probably out of session. That probably
Yep.
requires just a few of us just wanted to check.
Not a problem at all. We might
Two minutes or
might take a 3-minute adjournment. Thank you very much. So we'll be back at 8:27. Thank you. Thanks very much. We are back from adjournment. We are partway through item 9.5, place naming project, renaming sections of Aspen Street, Moonee Ponds decision. The mover, Councillor Samantha Byrne, and the seconder, Councillor John Sypek, had spoken to the motion, and I had just called for whether any other councillor might like to speak to the motion. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I mean, yeah, for me this is a little bit of a tricky one. Obviously something's at play. We're hearing that it's something that can be deferred in a straightforward manner. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's no urgency. We do have information in front of us around the point at some stage around we do have to rename the Aspen Street to deal with that confusion for residents, visitors, delivery services, emergency services, and so forth. You know, whether that would maintain a huge safety issue between then and sort of next month, I don't know. Likewise with some of the reviews, I guess they can sort of escalate depending on the merits, I'm assuming. So, yeah, so look, in the words of my esteemed colleague who is online, I might just see what others have got to say on this, and then, yeah, I don't sort of feel particularly comfortable deferring, but I'm appreciative of the circumstances. So I'll just I'll have a sit and listen for a bit. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this motion. Whilst it's important that we go through the name change, I don't know that it's absolutely urgent that it has to be dealt with at this month's meeting, and I think it can be deferred safely so that some of the things that have come to light and been raised by the in public question time tonight can be adequately dealt with before we make a decision as council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamish Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Fran Cosgriff.
Thanks, Mayor. It's a bit of a tricky one, and I probably, if any other councillors that haven't spoken want to, I'd be keen to hear their views. But I think given that the information that's come to us about, as I understand, is to do with a separate process, and that this would come back to us with the report would come back with the same information and recommendations. I probably don't really, I'm not really sure on the use in deferring it, but I'm not wholly against it if there's a compelling argument. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fran Cosgriff. Would any councillor who hasn't spoken like to speak on the motion? It's Councillor Theocharides and Councillor Barnes. I'm just really giving Councillor Theocharides a moment to get onto the screen if she would like to speak to the motion. Did you want to speak to the motion, Councillor Theocharides?
No, thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Cosgriff has mentioned what I was going to say anyway.
Thanks, Councillor Theocharides. Councillor Samantha, I might give you a right of reply just because there's been some uncertainty in the room, not necessarily any opposition, but given there's some uncertainty in the room, would you like a right of reply?
Sure. First of all, I will highlight when we're talking about urgency that the street renaming actually came from a petition that was submitted by the residents to get the streets renamed. So it's not as though it came from emergency service to say, please, we've got a real rush in doing this. So it was a petition that was submitted to us as on council.
It was submitted in 2025 and it's gone through, it's taken a significant amount of time already. And I don't think an extra month or however long it takes is going to be detrimental to this, to the renaming. In terms of due process, we are aware that there is something that needs to be followed up, and I think that because we're not under time pressure, we have the opportunity to respect that process. I'm well aware that when motions are deferred, that the agenda item will come back in the same format, but that doesn't mean that we won't have extra information similar to, say, what was available in a further information pack available to us at the time. So I think that this is a very reasonable request and I hope for your support in it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samantha Byrne. So I will put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Sypek, Councillor John Barnes, Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Hamish Jones and Councillor Rose Isa. All those against? Councillor Paula Theocharides and Councillor Fran Cosgriff. So that motion is carried. Thanks, everyone. So that brings us to 9.6, which is the adoption of the risk management policy. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Is there a motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Is there a seconder?
Happy to second it, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, so obviously we're being asked to adopt the risk management policy. I think we should have a clear framework for risk. We should understand the risk appetite and what we are adopting, and it helps us with decision making going forward. I support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Sypek?
Yes, Mayor. As risk management is always a very good thing to have in councils, and sitting on the audit committee, this has gone through the audit committee as well, and I'm sort of more than happy to support it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? In which case, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. That brings us to 9.7, to award the contract extension for the provision of landfill services contract number 203093. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Is there a motion? Councillor Fran Cosgriff.
I'll move the officer's recommendation, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgriff. Is there a seconder? Councillor Jones. Thank you. Councillor Cosgriff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation for this 2-year extension of an existing contract we have with Cleanaway and Hanson Landfill Services. It's for the estimated value of just over $3 million over the 2 years. I was quite conscious that we had endorsed a landfill or a waste thing in December, but in looking back, that was to do with the collection of rubbish, and then this is to do with where we put the rubbish once we have it. There's a lot of rubbish is expensive, it turns out, and there's a lot of it. We dispose of 28,000 tonnes from our curbside public litter bins and hard rubbish collections. Having reviewed the confidential attachments as well, I'm happy with the financial arrangements, and I guess there aren't that many places you can put rubbish in Melbourne, so it's not as though it's a hugely competitive process, I guess. In saying that, I guess, I wanted to the report, and I wanted to note that Council remains committed to diverting as much waste from landfill as we can through things like our food and garden waste collections. We have had textile recycling events this year. We're running waste education programs and a range of other things that I look forward to seeing continue, and hopefully we can spend less on landfill and divert more in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, this contract extension is a continual decision, not an ideological endorsement of landfill, but we do need somewhere to put our waste, put the landfill, and I think that, as it says in the report, if we don't extend this contract, we don't get guaranteed access at a guaranteed cost, and I think it's important that we extend the contract. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Philburn? Oh, do we need it to adjourn?
No, it should be right.
I've got plenty of paper here.
Or mostly free of electronics. Thanks, Sam.
Apologies, we've just spilt some water. We're just mopping up.
Don't know about we, but I did anyway. Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Echo the thoughts of Councillor Jones on this matter. There's not much, not really a lot of options here. And there's been a bit of discussion around landfill lately and sort of how much and how frequently it kind of ought to leave a residential property, but obviously where it goes is presenting a huge challenge to us, and getting the amount of landfill down in tonnage is well within our economic interest to do that. The officer's report also refers to the recovered energy Laverton facility when that's up and running in and around 2030, and may not be the right spot for it, but I think sort of my concerns with that are that we could have a very helpful facility to assist in landfill, or we could have potentially something that threatens the waste hierarchy through the need of that energy facility to have a fuel supply, a feedstock of rubbish coming into it to burn. So just sort of flagging that how we kind of our policies and programs around what we do with waste may need to be a bit dynamic to ensure that we're not getting some unforeseen circumstances with landfill. But for the reasons colleagues have mentioned, I think we need to support the recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Philburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? In which case, we haven't heard any opposition to the motion, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. And that brings us to our final item on tonight's reports, and that is 9.8, Council Expenses Report, Q4 2025-26. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Is there a motion? Councillor Hamish Jones.
I move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Is there a seconder? Councillor Philburn, thank you. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, I think transparency on councillor expenses is something that should be routine, not remarkable, and I'm happy to get it published and put out there.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Philburn.
Thanks, Mayor. Can't really add to that short, punchy summary.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak? In which case, I will put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. So that brings us to item 10, which is notices of motion, but we have none on the agenda this evening. Item 11 is urgent business. There was no urgent business lodged this evening. Don't believe there's any around the table. So that brings us to item 12, which is confidential items. We don't have any confidential items listed on the agenda this evening, which means that that concludes our business on tonight's agenda. Thank you for joining us tonight. The next council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 22nd of September 2026, and I declare this meeting closed at 8:46. Thank you and good night.